The Aditya Birla Group today announced a complex restructuring of two of its key businesses, that's Grasim and Aditya Birla Nuvo, both listed companies. Both will merge, and thereafter the financial services business will be demerged from that merged entity and it will be listed. And so there you will have the unlocking of the financial services business. To talk us through the rationale of this restructuring and the outlook for all of these businesses, we have with us the chairman of the group, Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla. Mr. Birla, thank you so much for joining us. My first question to you has to do with what prompted this unlocking of value, as you call it. Why at this point in time? Because this is something you could have done at any point in time. And maybe a simpler way of doing this was to just take the financial services business from Nuvo and separate it out and allow for an unlocking to happen in that fashion as well. But you didn't choose to do that. You chose this route. Explain to us why.
So, there is no right time. I mean, there is no, this is the best time to have done this. But the idea being that if you look at Nuvo in the last 2 or 3 years, we've spun out Carbon Black, we've spun out the fashion business, which is now an independently listed company. And so there is a theme that we are obviously playing to. And we felt that the financial services business is now the right size, the right critical mass.
Okay.
And it seemed like the opportune time. The reason why we didn't spin it off as an independent entity is because we have ambitious plans to grow the business. And this structure gives us the firepower in terms of just the ability to fund that ambition. Since this will be a subsidiary of Grasim, with Grasim having about 57% stake in the company. So that really is the reason for the construct from the point of view of the financial service business.
So Grasim will help then strengthen the business from a funding point of view as well.
Absolutely.
And that's really very important for any financial services business at this day and age, right? Especially to grow. Can you give us some sense of the valuation of the financial services business? Because I know we have all the swap numbers, but we don't yet know what that business will potentially be valued at.
So difficult for me to say, to be honest. Like would be in this case, in the case of a transaction like this, we have two independent valuers who are both very reputed firms and who have their methodology to value businesses.
I think Ajay suggested 20 to 25,000 crores. Is that correct? Is that the number?
So again, I can't put a number to it. I think it would be unfair of me to do that because I really don't have a good sense of what the valuers have taken as a valuation.
So since the key driver is the unlocking of the financial services business, can you give us a sense of your outlook for the business, your fundraising plans for it, your growth plans and expansion plans for it, and eventually whether you hope to separate out the insurance business as well, because we've already seen moves in that area, where large banks or otherwise have been now looking to list their insurance services businesses.
So in brief, this is not driven only by the need to grow the financial service businesses. I think that is one of the important planks for this overall construct of this transaction. We are also creating a behemoth that is a play on the India growth story. So you have a very interesting mix of businesses in the manufacturing space and the services space, businesses that are throwing up cash and businesses that are growing very fast. So if you believe in the India story, then there's no way that you won't track this company. As an investor
I get that.
Otherwise.
Grasim and Nuvo. I'll come back to that. But just your plans for financial services.
Financial services is a business that we are very ambitious about, as you can imagine. We've got a track record of more than 20 years. The business has come of size. Good quality book. Great processes in place from the point of view of risk management. And the idea is to retain or to become a dominant player.
Any immediate fundraising plans so that once this becomes an independent listed company, and then you spoke of the very strong financial backing that Grasim will give it, being a 57% shareholder, do you have any immediate fundraising plans, let's say over the next year or so?
Plans to raise funds as of now, but I think that the strong parentage gives it that much of more funding capability.
And when you speak of funding capability, I assume that you also mean that prepares the financial services business to look at potential acquisitions as one measure of growth as well.
Sure, I think we've grown through acquisitions in several of our businesses. And yes, it does give them the firepower to do that. Nothing in the offing as of now. But
which part of the businesses would you be looking to acquire?
So
where do you see scope for inorganic growth?
Potentially across business segments. So nothing in the offing just now, but nothing that stops us from looking at anything that creates value.
About the insurance business, any plan at this point
So
in
no
time to
plan of
list that
IPOing
separately?
the business.
Why is that, may I ask?
We basically are listing the holdco, which is going to be a source of funding going out in the future. So there really doesn't, there is no compelling reason to also list.
But the valuation
the insurance
dynamics for an
company.
insurance business would be different from an NBFC or a lending business. So you might, see value in being able to list that separately.
So that's an option that we examined, and we believe that the option that we've actually chosen is the best funding option for the business as a whole.
Okay. I know that you're pursuing the payment bank plan, between Idea and now I assume what will be ABFSL or Aditya Birla Financial Services Limited, correct? So are you disappointed that even now that the RBI has announced on-tap bank licensing for regular full-fledged banks, they've still ruled out the presence of big business groups?
I think that in our mind that ship has now sailed. So we're looking at growing the NBFC part of the business. And we really aren't banking on getting a bank license anymore.
But you were disappointed that they have in fact moved that?
Of course, I thought that it would be a very interesting business for us. We all thought so in the group. But it seems that regulation will not encourage large business houses to get a banking license, which is fair enough.
Do you agree with that? The
Not
regulatory
necessarily.
point of view?
So there can be many points of view
Okay.
Around it. But like I said, we've kind of moved on and decided to focus on the NBFC instead.
I just want to come back to the valuation. So just on some very quick back of the envelope calculations, right? The Nuvo share was trading today at somewhere about $1,560. The Grasim share about 4,539. So if you have 10 Nuvo shares for 3 Grasim shares, it roughly works out to about 15,620 rupees worth of Nuvo shares for about 14,000 rupees worth of Grasim shares. And then again, we did some back of the envelope calculation to see what the 7 additional shares of Aditya Birla Financial Services will be worth, and they amount to something like 2,000 rupees. So you're getting 15,620 rupees of Nuvo shares. In return, you're getting about 16,000, rupees of both Grasim.
So I don't
and
know where the
ABFSL.
numbers are from.
I'm just using
Menka,
basic share price because that's the only thing we have right
so
now.
for example, I wouldn't know how you've valued the financial services holdco, for example. But that sounds like it's a pretty even-handed transaction.
I was going to say the same. So, but I do want to know, could the Grasim shareholder look at this and say, hey, look, I had a debt-free company, really, at the end of the day, right? I had a debt-free company, I had a cash-positive company, in fact, and now I'm going to become part of, yes, a bigger, better company that gives me exposure to telecom and financial services, but both those businesses bring inherent risk with them, especially telecom, where you've said that the next 2 years is going to be difficult. So when you look at it from the Grasim shareholder point of view, do you think that he or she has reason to
I don't think so, because
not
this
be
new
enthusiastic
company
about this?
will own about 25% in Ideas, so it's not really responsible for either paying off the debts of Idea or to fuel its growth. It is at best a holding company for telecom, so to speak.
Correct.
The case is different in the financial
I'm not
services
talking about
space.
Idea debt, but I'm saying, whatever a holding company earns from, let's say, dividend payouts, etc., if those get stretched because of new capital plans, spectrum acquisitions, a market that's that's hyper competitive in the months to come, I'm just curious to know whether the Grasim shareholder ought to feel,
So I think that
I had a
that
safe
is
business and I'm now
that's
thrown
just sort
into the
of
wind.
chasing ghosts, because there is no real plan to do that. Like I was telling you, this really isn't about Idea. It's about bringing together an interesting set of businesses that can fuel the growth of some of our core businesses. And I think Idea has proven in the past that it has access to funds pretty much by itself, whether it's a QIP or a strategic investor or financial investors. I don't think that they need to bank on the new co to do that for them.
But the financial services business will bank on the new co, which is
That is
Grasim
true,
and
and
Nuvo
that is something
merged.
that we've said very upfrontly.
Yeah, and the Grasim
Also the
shareholder might
fact
feel that I don't want to have to be part of this in any fashion. So I'm just trying to look at it from
I
different
think it's
shareholder points of
important,
view. Right?
the transaction has just been announced, and I think it's important for investors to actually sit down and understand it clearly, holistically, and then take a view. And obviously, we respect the views of our investors.
Okay. Can you talk us through what your outlook for Grasim and Nuvo, the combined business, will be? Because you will now have a variety of operating businesses under it as well as holdings, right? So, I mean, just roughly if I was to list it, you'll be in cement through Ultratech, which is a holding. You'll be in Idea, which is telecom, again through a holding. You'll be in financial services, again through a holding structure. And then the operating businesses will be VSF, chemicals, solar power, textiles. And I think AB Fashion will be a very, very small holding, I think roughly about 11% or so. So that's what Grasim Nuvo, the combined entity, will be about.
So a very long-winded answer to that, but suffice to say that all of these businesses, practically without exception, are market leaders in their own spaces. And that's very unusual for a conglomerate with so many businesses to have every business which is a dominant player in its own industry. And I'd just like to say that this transaction is actually EPS accretive for Grasim right from day one. So I think that has a story to say by itself.
Okay. You don't feel that many of these businesses are currently going through difficult patches of growth, and therefore the true value of this combined entity might not be visible for many, many months to come, or a couple of years at least?
So I think that really is about the performance of the businesses and how well we can communicate the story to our investors. Like I said, this is something that's just been announced. And I think it will take a little while for investors to completely comprehend the construct of this transaction.
Okay, so if I was to reiterate what you said, the benefits of this are that the financial services business gets a very strong parent in the combined entity of Grasim Nuvo, and that the Grasim Nuvo shareholder, gets exposure to a wider variety of businesses.
You also have to remember, Menka, that both companies today are in similar businesses for a part of them. So you have viscose staple fiber in Grasim, you have viscose filament yarn in Nuvo.
Correct.
Those come together. You have caustic soda in both companies. Those come together. There is a certain amount of cross-holding that has always existed. So, for example, both companies have a shareholding in ABFRL. They both have a shareholding in Idea,
Correct.
in Hindalco. Those come together. So there are all of the positive impacts of those as well that will start to pay out.
So have you been able to sort of get a sense of when you combine these two businesses, how you will be able to extract synergies from this, what those synergies may be worth? Also a quick question on who the management will be of this combined business.
So synergies, really we haven't been able to put a number to it because it's a little difficult to do that. Management is something that we have enough time to think about, but I think that more or less the companies will remain to be managed obviously independently, but also by the same people who are managing them today.
Okay, but who will be the CEO of the combined Grasim?
So we've got to yet take a call on that. It's still very early days.
Okay, just a couple of more questions on just from the businesses and this restructuring part of you. A few years ago, you restructured your cement business. Last year, you restructured some of the fashion retail businesses. Now you've done this with Grasim Nuvo. Do you see any more restructuring required at the group level?
No, well, not as of now. Having said that, a statement like this has a shelf life, but there's nothing
How long is that shelf life?
I can think of as of now. I think that we've done a bulk of what needed to be done.
Okay.
And one feels a great sense of satisfaction about that.
Any cross holdings that you want to uncross at this point in time?
Not really. So
you still have various group companies owning a little bit of Hindalco here, a little bit of something else there.
So like I've said in the past, there has been no cross holdings that has happened in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So whatever is there has existed for a very, very long time. Huge implications in terms of tax and
so you don't intend to get rid of that?
Other issues of the kind, if one was to try and undo that, and it's just not worth the effort.
So at this point in time, for the next 2 years at least, there is no other restructuring that
I'm
you can
pretty sure there isn't,
level.
because I can't think of something. I think that there's a lot that's been done already, and a lot of positive impact is starting to show through, whether it's cement, whether it's fashion retail, and I guess that's what will happen with this transaction as well.
I wanted to use this to try and get a quick outlook from you on the various group businesses and what your outlook is on both the economy. Are you finally seeing signs of a turnaround in the economy? Do you
I
still
think so. I think a
feel
lot of the good work the government is doing is starting to show up in terms of demand across the sectors that we are in, for example, copper, aluminum, cement. So I think that where rubber hits the road, things are looking better, much better than before.
Are you seeing a pickup in cement demand across the country?
So we are seeing that happen in pockets, but when you have an upswing that happens, it would normally start off like that. in smaller areas before it starts to become a more widespread thing across the region.
Okay. You know, yesterday Mr. Mahindra was saying at his AGM that he's seeing an infrastructure-led recovery in the country. Would you concur with that?
I think so. I think that just the kind of capex that the government is committing to, let's say, on the front of highways or roads, is very encouraging. I mean, that's bound to show up in demand for a whole host of
But it isn't showing up yet. That's what I was trying to gauge.
Like I said, it's starting to show up, but these things typically would happen with a lag. And I think that we are at that cusp now, where the full-blown effect will start to now show up.
Okay, so cement is looking poised for better years from here
Absolutely.
on. What about metals? Do you think we bottomed out in the commodity cycle?
I would think so. I mean, you know, you have a lot of speculative money now going in and out of, let's say, the aluminum sector or the copper sector. So difficult to say, but on the basis of fundamentals, I think that we're pretty much seeing the bottom just now.
Okay, and telecom, you know, that's going to be the tough one. You said in the press conference that you're expecting the next 2 years to be really tough for telecom.
I think the next 2 years will be very turbulent. Having said that, I think...
Are you saying that from a competition and a geo-launch point of view?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You've got such a large competitor coming in with such deep pockets. You know, it's bound to shake up the industry.
Okay, and your plans for the spectrum auction? Because the general perception seems to be that there are not going to be too many takers for spectrum, which might in fact be good news for you, because I think you're looking to buy in, and that might mean it's slightly less expensive.
So we're hoping that we'll fill in the gaps that we have today in our spectrum. But you know, one has to wait and see what auction prices are like.
But are you expecting that the demand will be muted, and therefore this might be a good opportunity for
So one is hoping so. One is hoping so. But let's see how it plays out.
Okay, and one quick final last question, you know, where are you seeing the maximum growth come in your portfolio of companies?
So we actually have growth happening across quite a wide swath of our industries, whether it's cement, visco-staple fiber, whether it's fashion retail, you know, financial services. So I think that the story seems to be playing out very well as of now.
What about retail, your traditional retail?
So our traditional retail still takes a while before it starts to completely break even. So it is a much tougher business than
you intend to
probably anyone had anticipated in the country. But we built a strong franchise, and we want to stay on there. And you know, it's the point of time when you will hopefully start to see the returns happening after long.
No plans to divest that business in any fashion?
So no plans to divest it, no.